A few years ago, I decided to get away from the difficulties and chaos of life. The intense work schedule, endless phone calls, and the monotony of city life were wearing me out mentally. I did some research on the internet and saw a treehouse built high in the trees in a secluded forest. When I looked at the photos, it was clear that this was exactly the place I was looking for. There was no other structure around, only forest, nature, and peace. I couldn't miss this opportunity. I set out by car on Friday afternoon. The journey took 3 hours. The roads were bad for the last half hour of the journey. I drove on a narrow, gravelly forest road. During the journey, I realized that I had no cell phone signal, but instead of worrying me, this situation relieved me. Finally, I will find peace, I thought. The treehouse was a few minutes' walk from the road. I parked my car and started walking home, grabbing my bag. The road ran through the trees. The wind gently shook the leaves, the crunch of dry leaves on the ground, and the silence in the forest. I was away from everything. This kind of solitude was something I had been dreaming of for a long time. When I arrived home, the first feeling I experienced was admiration. I had literally fallen in love with the treehouse. I said to myself, I wish I could live here for the rest of my life. The house was skillfully built on the trunk of a thick and old tree. The house, which was accessed by wooden stairs, had a large balcony, an old-style door, and an architecture that fit in with the environment. When I entered, a warm atmosphere, although old in places, welcomed me. There were a few lamps, a fireplace, a small table, and a comfortable bedroom. Also, the shelves were full of books. Reading a book in the forest and drinking a hot cup of coffee was enough for me. I went out to the balcony to watch the sunset. The sun was about to set, the sky merging with the forest. The silence surrounding me filled me with a strange peace. It is very difficult to describe it. But as it got darker, this silence started to create more anxiety than peace. There was something disturbing me in the depths of the forest. Maybe it was because I had been living in the city with people for a long time. But the insect and bird sounds I was used to at night had almost completely disappeared. Normally, nature would not be this quiet at night, would it? After a while, I heard a slight creaking sound outside. At first, I ignored it. I thought it was probably an animal. However, the sound started to repeat itself every few minutes. I got up and looked out the window, but I couldn't see anything in the dark. It was 10 o'clock at night. As the hour passed, my anxiety started to increase. I tried to read my book, but I couldn't concentrate. I guess being alone in the forest made me paranoid. The creaking sounds coming from outside became more pronounced. At one point, I realized that the sound was right below the house. I took a deep breath, looked out the window, and still couldn't see anything. "You're scaring yourself," I muttered. Such thoughts usually take over when you're alone. Trying to calm myself, I went into the kitchen and got a glass of water. But then, I was startled by another sound coming from outside, the creaking of a staircase. My heart started to beat rapidly. I quickly turned off the lights and looked down the window silently. What I encountered terrified me. There was a silhouette standing right next to the stairs. It looked like a human. Its back was turned to me, and it was completely motionless. It was wearing black clothes. Its face was not clearly visible in the dark. I didn't know what to do out of fear. I quickly grabbed my phone, but when I remembered that there was no signal in this area, I panicked. After standing still for a while, the silhouette started walking slowly towards the forest and disappeared into the trees. Instead of feeling relieved, I got even more nervous. I locked the door and checked everywhere in the room. There was no one. But that didn't mean I was alone, did it? Because somewhere outside, that silhouette was still there. As the night progressed, the sounds got louder. This time, I heard footsteps coming up the stairs, scratching sounds approaching the door. Whoever was outside had to be human because the sounds were coming in a regular pattern. It couldn't be an animal making those sounds. "What do you want?" I shouted. The sound stopped suddenly. But a few minutes later, something even more frightening happened. The doorknob slowly moving down. I was so scared. I knew the door was locked, but that didn't reassure me, because I couldn't call for help. I didn't know what to do if whatever was outside got in. I was in a treehouse in the middle of the forest. The doorknob moved for a few seconds, then stopped. Suddenly, the environment became so quiet that I could even hear myself breathing. After a night of nightmares, the sun had finally risen, and it seemed like everything was over. The scratching, footsteps, and the movement of the doorknob had stopped. I didn't dare to go outside right away. My first job was to plan an escape in my head. I packed my bag. When the sunlight completely illuminated the forest, I stepped outside and slowly looked around, going down the stairs. However, there, at the bottom of the stairs, I saw a message carved in the mud. It was obvious that it had been written by a human being. "Next time, you won't be alone." I ran quickly to the car and left that forest, never to return. I still sometimes think about the moments when that doorknob moved at night. What was that silhouette? Who was it? And would I really not be alone if I went into that forest next time? I never want to know the answers to these questions. Last summer, my girlfriend Marie and I decided to have a peaceful holiday away from the city. We both wanted to get rid of the stress of the last few months. The place we were looking for had to be both surrounded by nature and also isolated and quiet. While browsing through holiday websites, a treehouse in the forest caught our attention. We chose this house because of its wooden design, large windows, and being surrounded by nature. "This place is perfect," Marie said while looking at the photos. We made our reservation and set off the next morning. It took us about 4 hours to get home. The roads were empty, surrounded by forest. When we got out of the car, the fresh air we breathed in and the sound of birds helped us get away from everything. The house was right in front of us. It looked like it was part of nature, between two big pine trees. We took the key left by the owner from a small box under the door and went inside. The house was small but very comfortable. An open-plan living room, a small kitchen, and a loft-style bedroom upstairs. There was a magnificent view of the forest from the large windows. Marie had already started taking photos. "I must share this on Instagram," she said with a smile. Seeing her so happy was worth everything. In the evening, we prepared dinner together and sat on the veranda. When it started to get dark, the stars in the sky were clearly visible. I said to Marie, "It is not possible to see so many stars in the city." She reached out her hand and pointed at the stars and got excited like a child. Everything seemed perfect. Until we heard that strange sound. When it got dark, the forest went silent. Only the occasional sound of crickets could be heard. But this sound was different. I cannot quite describe what it sounded like the rustling of leaves, then a few crackling sounds. At first, we thought the sound we heard was from the wind. Marie didn't really care about this. "There must be deer around here," she said. I tried to stay as calm as he did, but something was bothering me. When it was past midnight, we went up to the bedroom to sleep. The bed was right next to the window, and instead of closing the curtains, we preferred to sleep looking out at the forest. But later in the night, those sounds came back. This time, closer. Something moving slowly on the crackling branches and leaves. Marie was fast asleep, but I was staring up at the ceiling, listening to the sounds. Then, I heard a whisper. It was a very thin voice, almost faint. "Jake." It seemed to be saying my name. My heart was beating very fast. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but then I heard it again. "Jake." I sat down on the edge of the bed and went to the window to check if there was anything down there. The forest was completely dark. I couldn't see anything until my eyes adjusted to the darkness. But then, I noticed movement in the trees. A shadow. Marie. "Wake up," I whispered, and when she didn't wake up, I shook her shoulder lightly. Marie was in a daze. She rubbed her eyes and sat up. She asked worriedly, "What happened?" "There's someone outside," I said. We looked out the window together but couldn't see anything. "Maybe it's an animal," said Marie. She seemed very calm, but at that moment, a tapping sound coming from the porch scared us both. "Maybe it will sound too cliché to you." Marie took out her phone to call the police, but there was no signal. I checked my phone too, same result. It seemed like the power had gone out because the lights were not working either. We only had a small flashlight to see around the house. We decided to go downstairs with the flashlight on. We carefully went down the stairs and stood next to the door leading to the porch. I could hear a voice breathing slowly from behind the door. I decided to open the door while holding the flashlight tightly in my hand. Marie wanted it to stop me, but I opened the door anyway. I slowly opened the door and shined the flashlight outside. There was nothing. It was very quiet. I closed and locked the door and convinced Marie to go upstairs. "Let's wait for morning," she said. She was very scared now too. We went up to the bedroom and locked the door. Neither of us could sleep until morning. Those whispers, the tapping on the porch, even the light tapping on the window, it all continued throughout the night, but every time we looked, we couldn't see anything. As soon as the sun rose, we gathered our things and got in the car. We didn't even dare look back as we sped away from the treehouse. It felt like someone was going to pop out of nowhere at any moment. When Marie glanced in the rearview mirror, she screamed, "Don't stop! Step on the gas!" she said in panic. I looked, and I saw a figure at the edge of the forest. Tall, thin, with an indistinguishable face. It stood still. We didn't tell anyone about this incident after we got home, but my curiosity got the better of me, and a few days later I started reading the comments on the website where we rented the house. It looked like no one had rented it in the last year. I even noticed that the house had been removed from the list. I still can't forget the fear I felt that something was watching us in the depths of the forest. When I think about that figure, I can't forget that night we lived. Marie, on the other hand, never dares to vacation in the forest again. Now we vacation in coastal areas where there are many people.